Now, if you don't want to take such extreme action and starve yourself of all the pleasure, you can perform a smaller dopamine detox. You're going to pick one day of the week where you're going to refrain from one of your high dopamine behaviors completely. Whatever that behavior might be. Maybe checking your phone all the time, playing video games on your computer, binge watching TV, eating junk food, watching internet pornography, whatever. And from now on, every single week for one whole day, you're going to avoid that activity. You can still do other things, but the behavior you pick is off limits. Yes, you will feel slightly bored, but that's the point. You want to let your dopamine receptors recover from the unnaturally high dopamine that's been flooding your brain. And boredom is going to propel you to do other things that day. Things that you would normally put off because they don't release as much dopamine. And because you're bored, it's easier for you to do them. Of course, avoiding high dopamine behavior once in a while is good. But ideally, you should avoid those behaviors altogether, or at least as much as possible. Instead, you want to connect more dopamine to the things that will actually benefit you. And what I found is that your current high dopamine activities can serve as an incentive to pursue things that actually give you those long-term benefits. In other words, you could use your high dopamine activity as a reward for completing difficult work. And this is exactly what I do myself. I track all the difficult, low dopamine work I do. Cleaning my apartment, practicing the piano, reading books, doing some sort of exercise, creating these videos, etc. After I'm able to get a certain amount of work done, I reward myself with some amount of high dopamine activity at the end of the day. The key words here are after and at the end of the day. If I indulge in high dopamine behavior first, then I'm not going to feel like doing the low dopamine work. I'm simply not going to be motivated enough. So I always start with the difficult things, only then I allow myself to indulge in high dopamine activities. To give you an example, for every completed hour of low dopamine work, I reward myself with 15 minutes of high dopamine behavior at the end of the day. That means that for 8 hours of low dopamine, I allow myself roughly 2 hours of high dopamine behavior. Of course, these are my ratios. You can tweak them to your liking. Also, it has to be noted that if you're addicted to something that's damaging to your health, then you don't want to treat that behavior as a reward. Instead, find a different reward that's not as damaging. One that you still think is worth the effort. And if you're wondering what my guilty pleasure is, it's the internet. I can easily get lost there for hours without doing anything else. That's why I have this system. It's so I'm able to control my addiction. But make no mistake, even with this system, I still plan days where I abstain from high dopamine activities completely.